All right, so we've hit 5 minutes after. Those who just joined us, please share your information in the chat. We're looking for a name, business you're with, maybe location as well, just to share with the group where you're from. And we'll just kick things off, expecting some more folks to join us as we move along, but we'll start at the top. So, welcome everybody. This meeting or webinar will be recorded, so I'll share this out at the end, likely either tomorrow or Monday, with folks who registered. This topic of agritourism is a super popular one. It's actually something that was directly requested from farmers who are in our Farmer Peer Learning Network here along the lakeshore of northern lower Michigan. So we've opened it up to a larger audience, but I do want to sort of take in the method of this peer learning network and encourage as much farmer participation in the chat and throughout our discussion as possible. So Garrett and I don't want to be just talking heads here. We'd love to have your insights in the chat. We'd love to, if you want to raise your hand, I can pull you off mute, allow you to talk. We'd welcome any of that. And in that vein, I guess I'll just share some details about what's to come. We'll start off today with an introduction to why farms might be interested in agritourism, kind of adding that to their business model. Then we'll walk through some zoning and legal and sort of like licensing aspects to consider, and follow up with some specific examples of agritourism activities you can do on the farm. And in that section of the webinar, I'd really love you all to participate actively in that one. Just asking you to kind of throw in some links to farms who you've seen that are really doing it well, or that like have been an inspiration to you as you consider adding this to your business, or as you have added this to your business already. So if you can think through those while paying attention, we'd really love to have those handy and to drop in the chat, kind of share amongst the group. So with that, please feel free to share, again, questions or things that come up in the chat. We'll be attending to that as best we can. And in the meantime, we'll get started with some introductions. So, first off, my name is Trisha Phelps. I'm the CEO of Taste Local Difference. I have spent the last 15 years in local food systems, and I really identify with many of you as a entrepreneur wearing many hats. I live in Traverse City, Michigan, which has got a strong agritourism presence. In fact, a New York Times article was just released this week highlighting several of our partners who do agritourism. I'll drop that link in the chat as well. But the organization I work for is Taste Local Difference. We support farms and food businesses in marketing their efforts and their business, and helping them build successful and well-connected enterprises. So with that, I'm going to pass it off to my co-host, Garrett.
Thanks, Trisha. Hi, everybody. My name is Garrett Ziegler, and I work with Michigan State University Extension as a community food systems educator, and I also do some sustainable tourism development work. I'm based in Grand Rapids, Michigan, but in terms of kind of my agritourism work, I'm kind of working statewide there, supporting farmers and local municipalities that are working through agritourism development and other issues. So at MSU-Extension, we have lots of resources as well to support the work that you are all trying to do around agritourism. We have our webpage here with a screenshot showing, and we also help organize a whole series of sessions as part of the Great Lakes Fruit and Vegetable Expo that are focused on farm market and agritourism development. So, happy to be here.
All right. So why are we talking about agritourism anyways? That's where I want to start us off. there are a lot of key reasons that we'll talk about a little more here, and these are just some of them. Um, the first one on the list that you saw there is diversifying revenue streams. So I want to call this out because I think it's a really important aspect of successful business in general, including farm businesses. So if you rely solely on one source of revenue or one method of revenue, your business is often at risk if that revenue shifts or changes or costs increase, et cetera. So um, as more competition enters into the marketplace or your costs increase and even the the strain of the economy starts being felt for your customers, you may be kind of feeling effects of your margin thinning. And so diversifying your revenue streams, diversifying the way that your income is brought in is really important. And when I say that, I don't mean spreading yourself too thin. So I don't mean, trying everything that's out there. But I do mean having some variety in the types of projects that you're doing or types of sales that you're pursuing so that if one revenue stream sort of slows down in growth, another one can support the business and kind of keep it afloat. Okay. And the next reason for agritourism is about if you're already doing direct to consumer sales at a farmer's market and that's your thing, agritourism is a really great way to amplify those efforts. So a lot of the farms and food businesses we work with are selling direct to consumer, and this is a sort of simple way um, to to amplify those efforts and to use existing resources that you have. Um, so you can by pursuing some of the things we'll mention in terms of these agritourism activities, you can increase sales on the farm, really build awareness for your business because uh, people are coming directly to you, and you can do all of this without attending more farmers markets, right? Like so that need to increase labor costs won't be incurred necessarily because you won't have someone sitting idly by waiting for customers to get there. They can be on the farm actively engaging and participating in production, and you can be making sales right there in your location. Um, Next up, I think marketing and engagement is really critical piece to all of this. I think it's one of the reasons why agritourism is so interesting to us at Taste Local Difference. Because when it comes to this like brand awareness piece that we were just talking about, um, word of mouth is still the best marketing that there is out there, right? Um, it's another key reason why agritourism is really benefiting farms because it's connecting people to these farm businesses as brands. Um, Engagement with customers, engagement with the folks at the market that you have. Um, the goal of any brand is really emotion, right? Emotion is what like connects us, binds us, makes us loyal and active purchasers to a business. And so when people connect your brand with your products, with the land, with like a lived experience, something that's insightful or interesting to them, you've really just built like a valuable, meaningful connection with that customer. And what's great about that, not only is that a valuable relationship you've built with that particular customer, but those are the types of experiences that people talk about too. So they'll be shared with folks. They'll be thinking about the time they spent on your farm, and that's a really powerful way of kind of investing in that word of mouth marketing that we typically don't have much control over. It is still the best source of marketing, the most trusted source of marketing out there. All right. And lastly, as someone who has spent the last decade plus kind of investing in consumer education about the value of local food, I think this step, educating people on why local food is important and shouldn't be invested in, can often be the sort of like biggest, most time-consuming barrier in terms of making a sale to people. So if you use some of these agritourism activities, engagement activities to educate consumers about what goes into your product, about the quality, about how you use the funds that you earn, and reinvest in the space and the land and people, I think that makes a huge difference in building your own demand for your product. And even if it means future sales, not today, it does make a really big difference in the touch points you need to have with a customer before they're willing to make a purchase. Um, and I called out in here too the like that waste as an example inhibits purchasing. So if somebody say they invest in a CSA share and half of it goes to waste because they don't know what to do with it, actively choosing some of these engagement activities that help them use your products, so help them put um, raw produce to work for them, either by preserving it or, using recipes and learning how to cook it, that can really help, again, overcome a barrier that you might have to purchasing your product in the first place.
All right. I think I'm going to take over on this slide here. So there's a lot to consider in terms of um, your agritourism activities, events, programs, things that you want to do in terms of bringing people onto your farm, and what your local jurisdiction, whether that's a local township, a local municipality, like sometimes it could be a county level zoning, but for the most part, it's townships in the rural kind of parts of our state, kind of what those townships have in terms of their zoning ordinances and land use regulations. So I'm not going to, this is going to be a very surface explanation of kind of some of the things that you're going to want to think about and follow up with some additional reading, I would say, in terms of some of these items, because I won't be able to go so far in depth. We could talk about these things, for their own 1 to 2 hour webinar. So in Michigan, there's something that's called the Right to Farm Act. We don't have a kind of state right to agritourism law. Some states do have those, some kind of statutes on a state level that either define agritourism and lay out some stipulations around that land use. We in Michigan do not have anything like that. There's been some thoughts about passing something like that, but it at this point doesn't seem like it's really going to be that beneficial to kind of the rights and land uses for agritourism. We do have the Michigan Right to Farm Act in the state of Michigan, and that is something that protects farmers from nuisance complaints, primarily inland on their land that is zoned agricultural, and was created to help avoid farmers, having complaints lodged against them by people that were moving out to more rural areas of the state and the country and saying, I don't like what this farm is doing, but as long as that farm is doing their farm activities in a way that follows specific practices that are laid out, then they are unable to be those uses are unable to be superseded by local zoning or other sort of things like that. So we do have a piece of the Right to Farm Act that's called the Farm Market GAMPS, and that stands for Generally Accepted Ag Management Practices. And that is something that kind of lays out what can be done through a farm market or kind of in the marketing or sales of your produce or farm products directly to consumers. And within that farm market camps, it kind of lays out the things that you need to do as a farmer to make sure that the local zoning does not supersede that right that you have as a farmer to sell your products through a farm market or a farm stand. So that's a really important document to kind of look over. There's some specific regulations and things in there that we'll say you have to have at least 50% of your product if you're opening a farm market or a farm stand on your property. There's some stipulations around kind of its location in accordance to other buildings on your property, and some things like that. So I won't go into, like I said, a lot of detail related to that, but those are just some of the kind of base regulations and things that do have some protection for you as a farmer and offer you the ability to sell your farm products directly to consumer from your farm. Now, that being said, that doesn't allow you to just do whatever you want in terms of agritourism. And that's kind of where we run into issues in the state in terms of farmers wanting to do something that they think, they should be protected by the farm market GAMPs. But they may be doing things that are either regulated by another department at the state or a local level. And we'll talk about some of those licensure and some things around prepared food and things like that. Or there may be additional things, regulations on a local level that prohibit some of those activities like larger events and things like that. For some of those things, like larger events, you may need to get an additional permit from a local zoning department or board. That can be called a special use permit, and that'll allow you maybe to do some of those additional activities like events, festivals, live music, things like that. But all of that, is dependent on those local zoning ordinances and what is required. And I will say that every township probably has some different things across their zoning ordinances. So it really depends a lot on where you're located and what that specific township, is saying. So all that being said, if you're going to do any kind of agritourism activities or things where you're bringing folks onto your farm and you're like, I'm not sure if I'm allowed to do this, or if it's something that falls maybe in the gray area of what's defined within the farm market GAMPs, it's definitely a good idea to connect with your local zoning administrator at the township level, and let them know, be transparent and build that rapport early so that you don't start down the road of some project later to find out that your township is telling you that once you've already been up and running, you actually have to cease and desist because you're violating some specific zoning regulation or you don't have the correct permits. All that being said, if you build that rapport, and there are some challenges that you run into, patience is really important. We've worked with farmers that have been working for years to change some of the language in their zoning ordinances or get things approved through local townships and local boards to kind of allow them to do some of the activities that they're looking to do. And I will say that, that can be tiresome, and it can be a long process. So patience is really important in that. Next slide. Some additional things that you're going to want to think about in addition to the land use side of things and the local zoning side of things. Obviously, if you're going to be bringing people onto your farm, that's going to increase the potential liability that you will face. If somebody, comes onto your farm and trips over something or steps in a hole and breaks an ankle, there's the possibility that they may look to sue you. And that, opens up a lot more risk for you as a farm owner, landowner, and business owner. So we definitely recommend that before you take any of those steps towards having people onto your farm, you talk to your insurance agent that you are already working with, or if you aren't already doing that, you definitely look into getting liability insurance. Most times they'll just let you know how that's going to impact your risk and what maybe additional things that you'll want to have related to your policies around insurance. There's some additional food safety things that you're going to want to think about, especially around prepared foods and value-added foods, and we'll talk about those on the next couple slides. And depending on how far you want to go with, how many people you're going to have on site or the kind of investments you're going to want to make in structures, bathrooms could be a really important aspect to consider in terms of permanent bathrooms, rentals, or things like that. So there's a lot that kind of goes into kind of determining what to sell and how you're going to sell it at your farm market or through your kind of agritourism operations. If you're selling just farm fresh produce that you grow or produced on your farm, you don't need a license for that. If you're selling eggs that you've produced on your farm directly to a consumer, you do not need a license for that. Also, if you're giving away any samples of prepared food or fresh fruits and vegetables, whole fresh fruits and vegetables, you do not need a license for that. If you are going to try and sell honey, maple syrup, or wild foraged mushrooms, there's some additional considerations and requirements related to that. You don't need a special license to do that, but there's just some things that you need to consider in terms of packaging and labeling and those sort of things that you need to follow. And all of that information can be found on the Michigan Department of Ag and Rural Development's website. Next slide. Now, if you are thinking about maybe selling some value-added foods, you're saying I always have an abundance of strawberries at my farm that don't quite get picked, and I want to make some strawberry jam to sell along with some of the strawberries or some of the other produce that I grow on my farm. You can absolutely do that. If you're only looking to make a small amount of sales up to 25,000, you are allowed to actually do that in your home kitchen under the Michigan Cottage Food Law. There are certain products that you're allowed to make under this. Baked goods, I think it's, different. I know salsa is something that's not allowed, but there's kind of a lot of different products that aren't allowed. So make sure you understand if you're going to be making something and want to do it cottage food, that it is one of those products that is allowed. And that resource is definitely available on the state's website. And you also must follow certain labeling requirements. And this is an example here of something that you may want to have if you're creating a commercial or a cottage food product. If you are looking to go over that $25,000 in sales into something more commercial production where you need a licensed commercial kitchen. So again, that's any value-added product like a jam or a jelly or the sort of things that are over $25,000 in sales. Any ready-to-eat food that you would want to offer as part of your agritourism experience. A lot of farms offer donuts, maybe deli sandwiches, things like that. You need to be creating any of those ready-to-eat foods or baking them or doing any of that food production in a licensed commercial kitchen. And then another thing to consider is that you may need if you're looking to do a farm dinner or kind of selling food on your farm through an agritourism experience, you may need an additional special event permit for those sorts of things related back to the local zoning. So I know I just, I think is that my last slide there, Tricia? Yeah, okay. I know I just had a lot of information kind of about these things. There's a lot of great resources on our MSU-Extension website and through the state's MDARD website that relate kind of specifically to these different topics. And I'm also happy to answer any specific questions as we go along.
Great. Thank you, Garrett. All right. So we've had some folks join us since the beginning. So I just want to throw out there again that this topic was a direct request from our farmers in the Farmer Peer Learning Network along the lakeshore of northern Lower Michigan. And we've opened it up to a larger audience, but I really want to maintain the engagement and participation of that typical meeting. So I'm going to be talking through some general agritourism activities that are out there. And I'd love if you all could share some links to either businesses that have inspired you, or when I name off these activities, things that come to mind. I think it really helps to have some sources of inspiration and shared links and details of people who are doing it well, etc. So we'll throw those in the chat. In addition, at the end of this space, we'll have a couple best practices, etc. But we'll also leave a little room for question, answers, and discussion as a group too. So stay tuned for that. So to kick things off in terms of these activities, this may seem obvious, but the first sort of category that I want to talk about is farm forward activities. And in terms of agritourism, you might think, well, isn't everything farm forward? the location of these activities is most often, yes, on a farm. But I think of these activities as putting sort of the farm first, and that is like the priority or sort of the like focus of the activity. So things like farm tours, petting zoos, U-Picks, farm stays, and even like some CSA pickup experiences if they're um, uh, more extensive than just grabbing your box and go. So a few examples that I have seen related to these, and thanks folks for throwing some of yours in the chat too. Um, just saw recently that Providence Organic Farm is doing some lamb tours. So they've got some sweet little baby lambs that were just born, and they're uh, showing those off, helping folks like connect to the animals on their property. And another one that I haven't attended, but I am excited about is Folklore Wine and Cider. They've got some farm tours tied in with their tastings. I threw those examples in the chat as well. Um, all right, fantastic. The next example of some activities for agritourism are really focused more on recreation and entertainment. So again, it's happening on the farm, but this is the focus of it is more sort of like fun and play or uh, entertainment. Um, and examples of those could be corn mazes and hay rides, pumpkin patches, Christmas tree farms, festivals, live music, and races. Um, Speaking of which, I have an example of a race. Um, Taste Local Difference actually was the beneficiary once when we were a when we started out as a nonprofit. We were the beneficiary of this Farmland 5K. So this happens in and around Traverse City. A really fun race that is both a running race and a bike like mountain biking-ish race throughout the farmland close by Traverse City. Another example, I think this is out east a little ways, is this sunflower field. So people go and they open up the sunflower field for photos, but you can they encourage a suggested donation via Venmo, and people kind of like tag and share on social and encourage it as a spot for people to, take their family photos. Awesome. All right. Culinary experiences. So this is another favorite. Um, Farm to table dinners, as Garrett was mentioning, some of these may require some additional permits or things of that nature, or even licensing. But farm to table dinners, tastings, on-farm restaurants or cafes, cooking classes or demos. These are this photo here is actually from Farm Club, another great example of agritourism close by me here in Traverse City. But one I wanted to share in the Detroit area is also Keep Growing Detroit. They have just a almost endless array of classes that I really love. They're all over the place in terms of like the types of classes and offerings that they have, and they've got a engagement and education team that really focuses on hosting those and selecting the topics that the community will enjoy. Pass it over to you, Garrett.
Yeah, thanks, Trisha. So, a lot of farms we kind of see dabbling in agritourism, usually start with maybe some kind of farm market or farm stand. These can look a variety of different ways. They can be a pop-up tent that you might see at a farmer's market, or they can be, pretty large retail, almost grocery store levels of product diversity and those sort of things. So the retail side of it, again, this is your opportunity to sell your products directly to the consumer. They're coming to you, and it's a really important aspect of that agritourism experience. So maybe you're offering them some additional education or farm to table dinner, and having that opportunity for them to then learn from that, learn maybe how to use your products, and then go purchase them to take home and make that recipe, is a really important aspect. So within these farm markets and farm stands, you also might be selling value-added products that we talked about earlier, the cottage food products, or maybe even some of the commercially produced value-added products. These, don't have to be things that you are producing on farm. Maybe you're working with some other farms to buy in some things, some of those value-added products. You've got a friend or a neighbor farm that makes goat's milk products, and you want to highlight that and sell it in your farm market or at your farm stand. Those are all definitely things that you can do. Again, gift shops and things like that can be additional ways that you can pull some value out of these retail opportunities, selling things that kind of maybe go along with the specific farm products that you have available, that kind of highlight different uses or things like that. Maybe there's a specific cooking implement that you need, or a process, a thing to break down a specific farm product or use a specific farm product. You can kind of sell that along with those products to make it easier for the customer to enjoy. Private events are another very popular aspect of agritourism. And this is, again, kind of starts to get more into that gray area of, is this really related directly to your farm and farm products and increasing the opportunities for people to purchase those, or is it just another a way that you're kind of using this farm space to offer unique events and experiences? Both of those things can be true, but again, this is where some of that local zoning and some of those things can become more tricky, and just we've seen more lawsuits around things like wedding barns and those sorts of things, where maybe the drifting, you're starting to drift away a little bit from that original agriculture use and production on the farm. And we've seen them be great ways for farms to add additional value to the landscape, to the experiences that they can offer. So I just would caution anybody that's looking to do these sort of things, especially weddings, things that maybe aren't directly connected back to your farm products, to just be very upfront with your township and kind of work through those things ahead of time before you get down the road of renovating a barn at a very expensive price tag with a plan to host weddings, and then you find out that that's not going to be a viable option. That being said, things like corporate retreats, workshops, birthday parties, other group gatherings, can be a great way to bring in groups to experience a lot of those offerings that you might already be providing for the public: workshops, classes, private tastings if you're a winery or you have specific products that involve tastings or samplings. So they can be great ways to bring more people in, maybe work kind of in the weekday hours or things like that when you're not as busy with your usual weekends. So another great way to kind of take advantage of the spaces you have on your farm and the ideas that people associate kind of agritourism with seasonal and holiday activities in the fall, especially, and around Christmas time. We've seen a lot of farms expand into some evening activities. Maybe they'll turn their daytime corn maze into a haunted corn maze, or where folks can go through at night with flashlights and that sort of thing, and there'll be some jump scares and things like that. Again, that's probably going to add a little bit of risk and additional liability to your farm, so you're going to want to have those discussions with your insurance provider before you kind of go down that road. Christmas events are becoming more and more popular, not just on farms that might sell Christmas trees or be Christmas tree farms. We've seen, the orchards, the pumpkin patches, those types of farms, trying to, increase visitation in times of year when maybe traditionally they wouldn't be open, and they'll extend that season into Christmas. They'll maybe buy in some Christmas trees, still offer some of their products, and have special events where Santa comes in, and there's lots of people that you can work with to hire to bring some of those experiences, whether it's Santa or reindeer or different activities. Easter egg is another great way. Easter egg hunts are also becoming very popular, and another great way to um, bring people out to your farm and maybe a non-traditional time of year. Use that open space that you have, and provide just a great family atmosphere for folks to do those sorts of activities. All right. So just going to talk quickly through some just best practices to be thinking about when you're getting involved in agritourism. So liability waivers, those can be useful. We're not really 100% sure if they're actually providing you any necessarily protection, or not. Maybe just makes people feel a little bit better about doing some things. So they can be useful, but they're not an end all be all for protection. We definitely recommend that people still, make sure you're talking with your insurance agent and taking all the steps that you need to take. Thinking about things like coupling some of these activities together. If you're going to do a tasting, maybe have it in conjunction with additional activities, whether it's a tour of the vineyard or some other event. Collaboration with not only other farms, but other businesses in your community. Maybe you provide a product to a local brewery or a distillery that features some of your farm product in one of their beers or cocktails or something. Having a collaborative event with them, maybe where you're then bringing people out to the farm to see how your products are grown and experience that, just can be a really great way to kind of increase your reach in the local communities. If you are planning something that's an outdoor event, especially here in Michigan, we all know how the weather can be, especially in the fall. So have some ideas about, tents or things or a weather plan. I mentioned this before, but be friendly and transparent with your local officials. We've seen one too many times where those relationships got off on the wrong foot, and it led to lawsuits and more headaches that probably could have been avoided by just being a little bit more transparent, and upfront. It is really important to connect with other farmers in your area, not only for promotional things, but like I said, if there's some products that maybe you don't grow, but a farmer down the road grows, you can feature those products in your farm market or your farm stand. Starting small is really important. Don't try and bite off too much if this is your first season, maybe wanting to explore some agritourism offerings. If you already have a CSA, maybe start with an event that's just focused on your CSA members as a way to kind of test out hosting something with an audience that already knows you and already knows your farm and already has that connection. And then, like any other enterprise or business, especially with people coming out to your farm, don't be afraid to tell your story. Talk about why this land and the farm and the product that you're growing or producing is important to you. And you've really got the opportunity to connect with people on a much more deeper level when they're coming out to the place where you grow or produce your food or do your kind of farming activities. So feel free to lean into that, and don't feel like you need to skirt some of those personal things. We think it's important for people to connect on that deeper level.
There's our mother farmer appearance. Um, so to Garrett's point, I think an important part of all of this, of telling your story, of marketing your business in general, of growing your business, is not to be something that you're not, if that makes sense. To just lean into what you have, lean into your story, your outgoing personality, your picturesque landscape, whatever things you have on site already. Try to utilize those existing resources, um, leverage your strengths, and that's the type of agritourism activity you might lean into. You know, if you're someone who really loves to teach, doing some kind of class, that sort of thing. Don't try to bite off something that's too big or that isn't of an interest to you. So in terms of getting started this season, we wanted to throw out a few examples of ways, again, you can sort of start small, um, try something on for size. And an example of that is not even bringing people to the farm necessarily, but getting started with this idea of connecting people to the behind the scenes um, kind of activities, which is really what draws folks to agritourism activities is they haven't been on a farm before, or they haven't seen how vegetables are grown, or they're, you know, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And I think that a great opportunity for you to kind of dip your toe in the water is some of these behind the scenes or farm tours on social as well. So something that you might record or do live, again, to explore what that's like, explore how it feels, start to get people to think of your business and connect your products to this picturesque place. Um, Another example is scheduling a one-off. So you don't have to do a whole series of events. You don't have to have it, a whole calendar of activities planned. Just pick a one-off and try it on for size and see how that goes. Um, Another thing you could try this year is attending another farms event to experience it as a participant. I think there's a lot to learn from us all sharing things together in this type of a space, but also to experience it firsthand. Um, Understand as a participant what you liked, what you didn't like, what you might do differently, how it might play in your space. Those are all really valuable insights that you could get started with this season. Another example is potentially inviting a food truck for an afternoon. This would likely require some additional permitting, et cetera, but it's again a sort of one-off piece. You don't have to invest in infrastructure. It could be a quick way to engage folks and tie in your products to what's served at this food truck for a fun celebration, whether it be an anniversary or a harvest party or something of that nature. Um, Another thing to try could be hosting something for free. So I know there's a lot of work that goes into to trying something like this for the first time. But as you're getting your, sort of feet wet with the whole process and you're trying to understand what people in your area are generally interested in, it might be smart to give a free workshop and see who is interested or who signs up for it and kind of develop your list of events or types of workshops you might be featuring in the future based on that feedback that you get. And last but not least, another example, setting up a small farm stand with an honor system is something I know that can be a little challenging in some ways to have that trust that the honor system is going to work. But I think having a small farm stand on site with that also eliminates the labor challenge that we were talking about earlier too. So allows you to have folks coming direct to you, understanding where your location is, sort of tying those pieces together in terms of the brand, but it's not additional work in terms of labor or staffing a market. And we've got lots of activity happening in the chat, so I want to take a moment to explore that too. I'll leave you with this resource before I dig in there. Um, so as a organization that specializes in marketing, I wanted to make sure that we gave you a little freebie here at the end as well to sort of make sure that your marketing strategies in order in regards to trying something like this on for the first time, or if you're already engaged in agritourism, making sure that you've thought through some of these strategies. So this is just a quick download. You can use your phone or I'll throw the link in the chat as well. But essentially, you know, there's this saying, of course, that like you build it, they will come, and that is just not the case. Um, at least not right away, right? We need to invest in getting the word out and sharing it with people and cross-promoting it and those types of things. So this checklist should just give you kind of uh, a strategy and a list of things to make sure that's in order, and get you off the ground. Okay. With that, I'm going to take a pause. Anybody is welcome to throw questions in the chat or raise your hand and we can take you off mute. But I'm going to read through this chat real quick. Garrett, if you see anything that you want to call
I
out,
just
please.
see some potential B2B sales happening here.
Oh,
So
great.
I will
Fantastic.
I will vouch for St. Steve's being a delicious product, and know Chris and Steve well, and yeah, they've got great products. And yeah, farm stays have come up. I know some folks. The question about flies at farm dinners, managing flies with cattle or pigs, that's not a question I know the answer to, but not sure if anybody's experienced that. Got some people buying dogs off of each other, so that's helpful. Good to see. Farm stays is a tricky one. I think uh, there's some townships that are a little more lenient with farm stays than others. I know some farms have been working to try and change some of those zoning regulations around farm stays and specifically camping, and allowing some of those minimal campsites on farms. I see Kim's question about how forgiving are tourists of a bit of a farm disorder. Um, I think that's a good question. Yeah, I think clean up the farm is important. And I think some people, yeah, expect some disorder. It is a working farm. And I think being as educational with that, and why your farm appears the way it does and how a working farm operates, and that it is can be a dirty place. That can really help people understand that and see the uniqueness of it versus the disorder of it.
Mhm. Yeah, I think it sort of speaks to that behind the scenes piece. They're expecting a picturesque place, which is great, and they will see some form of that certainly, but also, like Garrett said, explaining why the tractor's there or why the this implement is here also helps make it educational and connect the dots for them.
It does look like Adam would like to ask a question. I don't know how
Yeah.
to give if we can give him the ability
Yep.
to speak.
Adam, would you like to ask that question about bathrooms off? Whoops. Let me see. I know I can do this. Here we go. Allow to talk.
You hear me now?
Yes, we can.
Yep.
So I I'll ask the question because I'm pretty sure we wouldn't be the only person to have this dilemma. So we have a farm stand, which is small enough to qualify as under the farm stand rules, and so it's just a small 20 by 12 building. Um, I really like the farm stores that places like Lakeview Hills and Bear Creek have. But once you get to that size, then MDARD requires you to follow the state commercial building codes, which, as I understand, then require an employee bathroom. Our location, I'd have to put a well in and a whole septic field just to have a bathroom just for employees. I guess by law, you don't need to have a bathroom for your um, customers. But it's sort of odd because all the people that work on the farm now just use a porta john. I don't need to have a bathroom for them. But if they're working inside a store, then this catch 22 requires a bathroom, and so it's preventing us from building a bigger store because it would be a $70,000 investment just for a well and a septic. Do you know anyone that's gotten around this, or is there a workaround that farms can take advantage of?
I will say, Adam, that I know Lakeview experienced that exact same challenge. So the market that they had actually on the farm property before the new larger store um, got dinged at one point because of what they were selling and the volume at which they were selling to uh, fall within those boundaries of needing to have the on-site bathroom, and so they had to shift course. So Bailey and John might be a good contact to chat with about that. I'm not sure if Garrett has any additional insight into that, but I know that they experienced the same thing.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. Sorry, go
Oh,
ahead.
go ahead, Adam.
No, I have talked with them about it, and they didn't have a good solution, which is why I'm pursuing it, because it seems like a unintended like requirement that hopefully there's a workaround.
Yeah, I know there's, some exemptions to kind of the retail food establishment license, and I don't know if that's an aspect of this for sure or not. I think maybe that was what that farm got dinged about, was that they had an inspector come out and say they should have that license, and if you have that license, you need to have a bathroom for folks to use. So I don't know how that applies to employees specifically. I think that was more
Yeah,
for
I don't think
visitors.
that was the case for them. I think the rule is what you're required to have for employees, and the law is, as the state law, as I understand it, that so that if you have a gas station, that you have to have your
Hmm.
employees have access to a bathroom, which is very sensible in an off in most places, but in the case of a farm store, well, you're already working on a tight budget, and farm staff is going somewhere else to begin with, right? You don't have to have a bathroom for outdoor staff, but then once you have them walk inside a building, then you have this new rule. So anyhow, I just was hoping someone else might have found a good solution.
Not that I know of. Yeah, but I have heard that as an issue previously, and it sounds like most people that I talk to are just like, we ended up having to spend the money to install the bathroom.
Okay, maybe a composting toilet would suffice.
Maybe. See a question from Aaron in the chat. That's a good question, Aaron. I do think if you are a licensed commercial kitchen food producing facility, that yes, then you do need to then buy eggs directly from, you cannot buy eggs from yourself, that you need to buy from a licensed egg producer. Okay, Adam has some experience with that as well. So I don't know if there's a loophole around that. It doesn't sound like there is. And I understand the
Very
desire to do that. Yeah. It's,
no kidding. Well, it sounds like in addition to sharing this recorded webinar with folks, I'll get with Garrett to pull together some other resources and links too related to these licensing questions that we can include in there too, just to get you guys headed off in the right direction with those questions. Unfortunately, there is some red tape that doesn't sound like we've been able to get around, but hopefully with some more of the advocacy for the uh, reasons behind why farms are investing in agritourism activities, some of that can shift and change in the future. Any questions from anybody else before we close out today? Oh, thanks, Gary. Yeah.
yeah, I just dropped in the chat the link to the Michigan Agritourism Association. They're a great resource for farms that have Agritourism. They have a directory they put together every year. You can join as a member. They have additional resources. I know they're developing kind of a beginner's guide to Agritourism that will include a lot of those like state and local resources. And I think they also have a private Facebook group for their members that can be a great place to ask some of these questions and hope, get some responses from some other farmers. And I did want to also mention, they host tours of farms, and from so many farmers that I've talked to about their membership in META, but also the NAFTMA, which is the North American Farm Direct Marketing Association that has an agritourism conference every year. So many farmers I've spoken to have said those memberships have really helped them so much in learning about what other farms have done, what things make money, what things don't make money, what things to try, and learning from all of those mistakes.
Fantastic. All right,
Thanks,
folks.
Adam, for that.
Yeah, thanks, Adam.
Info.
Thanks all. Really appreciate you all being here, and thanks for your time today. Thank you, Garrett, also for lending your expertise.